welcome back to Brashonomics President's Day. You might be taking the day off, you might be getting some extra things done, or as we're talking about, you might be focusing on some of those priorities that maybe you haven't been focusing on. A lot of people who listen to the show, who we talk to, are concerned with the housing market, and they're worried about maybe if this is the time to buy or if they should continue renting. Conor MacEvilly joins us, real estate agent who really focuses on educating home buyers and sellers with his website, mynorthseattlehome.com. Welcome, Conor.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. So you're new to the area. We talked, or not that new.
Yeah.
You came from
Ireland originally.
From Ireland. So we're all going to know where that accent is.
Yes, it is.
All right. How long have you been here?
About 20 years.
All right.
But I still have the accent.
You do.
Yeah.
It works.
Thank you.
Yeah. You had talked about, before we came on the air, about that difference between the importance of owning a home in Ireland and then this American dream concept of owning a home and how it's such a big part of the American dream.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
So when before I moved to the States, I wanted to move here for a long time. And to me, the American dream was, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, opportunities, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When I came here, it's life, liberty, and pursuing a home on weekends. It's like somehow the concept of owning a home has been hijacked by the real estate industry. And even though, yes, I am a realtor, but I just think as people need to understand that there's also pros and cons to home ownership. Owning a home has a lot of benefits, and I love my own home, but people need to know what they're actually getting themselves into. It can be an asset, but also can be a liability.
Yeah. Do you think, how do you help people answer then, if that is a good fit? I mean, from the mortgage side, we do a lot with the financial side of rent versus owning.
Right.
And you kind of had a slightly different take on that.
I think obviously just because you can actually afford a home doesn't necessarily mean that maybe you should buy a home, because if you're the kind of person who travels a lot and you're just going to stay in Seattle for the next 3 years, then buying a home I don't think is a good idea. And I tell everybody I'm working with right now who's looking to buy a home that don't buy a home unless you're going to keep it for a minimum of 6 years. Because personally, I have no idea, and nobody out there does know what the market's going to do. So if you want to turn around and sell your home, it has to go up by 10% to allow for the cost of selling that home.
Just to break even.
Just to break even, yeah. Be able to move on. And for some people, when they have to look at their finances, they have different lifestyles. And do they want to give up that luxury of being able to do what they want? When you buy a home, compared to renting, your monthly expenses go up. So maybe have to sacrifice some of your daily pursuits.
That lifestyle.
Yes.
So when people do decide, let's say they've decided in your mind they're going to stay there longer than 6 years.
Right.
And it makes sense financially. Why are the buyers there? Lots of people are willing to stay places more than 6 years. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Financially, it makes sense for so many people right now. It is cheaper than renting.
Yes.
Why are people so skeptical?
I think basically they've seen what's happened over the last 5 years, and it's kind of taken the gloss of home ownership away, because they've seen all these people who've lost their homes, been foreclosed on by the banks, and even though interest rates are unbelievably low, homes are relatively dirt cheap. A lot of people are still wary of jumping in. They're very, very cautious. They're sitting on the fence, and probably interest rates are not going to go down anymore. Home prices may go down a bit, but I think they're just generally, once bitten, twice shy. That's what they're saying. And only the very convinced are going to jump in and buy right now.
And, you also mentioned that maybe people can't even find the house they want. They want something that's different than maybe what is being offered.
Yeah, that's a big problem right now. I have plenty of buyers, but there's no inventory out there. It's the same homes. And when buyers start looking, it's a bit of a shock for them that they realize I'm going to be in competition with other buyers for a kind of an average type home, because they think they're in control right now, whereas in fact there's a lot of competition for average type homes. I actually worked with somebody last year looking to buy an average home in Greenwood neighborhood, and the second day that home was on the market, there was 2 agents in there doing pre-inspections on the property so they could make an offer by waiving the inspection. So it's kind of a surprise for them when they do jump out there and start looking.
Yeah, it seems almost as if, if you've decided to buy a house, it's also hard to actually find the house you want to buy.
Absolutely. So it's kind of a catch-22. There's buyers, but there's no inventory for them.
How do you, let's say somebody is ready to go down the path, wants to find a house. Maybe they've looked online. They've seen lots of houses they like.
Right.
How do you help people go through that transition, though, of renting to owning? Because it's not, I've done it, in mortgage, we've seen people do it, but from the home aspect, I suppose.
Yeah.
How do you help people transition?
Well, first of all, it's meet them and ask them some pretty standard questions, like how long you're going to own the home. But also the first question I ask is, why do you want to buy a home? And if they're renters, the classic answers are, I'm tired of renting, making the landlord rich, tired of U-Haul trucks.
Sounds like postcards we used to send out for marketing.
Ones. But then I kind of ask them again, so what's the real reason you want to buy? And they're going, what are you talking about? And you'll get about 2 out of 10 will say, well, I want to make a bunch of money and leverage up to a big house, take out the equity. And for me, I really try to convince them that it should be a home first. It's where you live, raise your kids, all that kind of stuff. And if you're lucky, it'll turn into an asset. But when you buy a home, look at it as someplace to live in. Also the financing, I think, is hugely important. That obviously, I'm a little biased. The realtor is important, and almost important is the mortgage broker you work with. You kind of need to educate yourself as to what you're getting into. It's not all a bed of roses. There are risks.
It is not a bed of roses, and especially if you work with somebody. The old mortgage broker or banker or lender used to say, "We can do everything." Oh, we can do that. We can do that. And now, it is, if the due diligence isn't done up front, that's a key factor.
Yeah. So I always recommend they work with a mortgage broker who's willing to meet them in person, sit down and explain the whole mortgage process, their options, the closing costs, exactly what they're getting into. Because for most first-time buyers, the mortgage is like quantum physics. They're completely confused by it.
There's only 45 pages of disclosures.
I know.
Period. It's harder than quantum physics sometimes.
Well, maybe soon with that new consumer advocacy group, they'll have one page.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, I think the one page went through about 4 different levels of government, and it's back up to 6 pages.
Yeah, I take 6.
Yeah. Well, that's one page. One disclosure. Talk a little bit more about being realistic, though, because if you meet with a lender and you've maybe decided a purchase price, a comfortable monthly payment, how do people ebb and flow into the dream world and the reality?
I think the important thing is, even before you meet a realtor, is get pre-approved so you know how much you can borrow. Then you want to sit down and kind of make your list of your 5 must-haves, non-negotiable. My house has to have this. Like when I bought my home in Ballard, I had to have 3 beds, 2 baths, had to have a fireplace. That was my number one. Kind of weird. But for me, that's what I wanted. So then after you've been pre-approved, you go in and you go on websites and you look at homes and you plug in those criteria. And can you actually afford that type of property in that neighborhood? So I think that's an automatic reality check for them. Can they afford this home? And if they can't, change their criteria or look in a different neighborhood.
And I think, Conor, we have to go to break. Again, we're here with Conor MacEvilly from Coldwell Banker Danforth. And I think as people do get pre-approved, I think people actually are finding out they can afford a little bit more than they maybe anticipated.
Correct. But whether I work with people and they can afford a home for $400,000, but they can look at the number. Do I want to live with this number? So they say I only want to buy $350,000. That
is certainly the flip side of 4 or 5 years ago when everybody got bought up to their max, then asked if they could get a little bit more.
Same as I did.
Yeah.
2003.
Yeah, we were I hear you.
Easy money.
Well, Conor, thanks so much for joining us again. That's Conor MacEvilly from Coldwell Banker Danforth and Associates.